Chris Cuomo here. I hope that Ash Wednesday, if it is meaningful to you, I hope it is full of meaning for you. Welcome to NewsNation. So, talk about being penitent. Boy, do we have a lot of people who need to ask forgiveness after last night. We got a full serving of the state, not of our union, but the state of our political disunion. President Trump wanted this address. He wanted to be in front of Congress. He wanted to be in front of you. Why? Well, putatively, to regain momentum, okay? To remind that his agenda is on fire. The most, the best, the biggest, the fastest, et cetera, et cetera. A string of superlatives. Why? Sinking approval numbers in the polls. So he started out by saying that more people, more of you, are more enthusiastic about the economy now than before he won. Now, the problem is that's dead wrong, thanks to high prices and plunging markets that is reflected in every measure that has been made since he's been president. But the truth would have been enough if the president wanted to toot his own horn. He rightly mentioned that border crossings have reached historic lows. 30,000 in January, under 9,000 in February. He also suggested that his DOGE efforts would find more wasteful spending than ever before, that they had already found hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, look, finding waste, fraud, and abuse is a popular and admirable goal, okay? But let's be honest, DOGE thus far has been little more than a string of disappointments, and it's not just about not having time, it's what it's doing with its time. Trump claimed DOGE found hundreds of billions, right? It's not true. Even DOGE claims just over 100 billion, but I don't even buy their number. Why? Because they say they found it, but they can't show what they found. They only have receipts for about 20 billion. And they keep having to change their findings because they keep demonstrating they don't know what they're doing. And even if they were to identify what they thought were substantial savings, Congress will have to agree on all of it for any of it to get removed. Why? Well, because despite Elon insisting that the executive should be able to decide spending matters, he is clearly no genius when it comes to understanding civics. He even has his Twitter outlet amplifying the idea that Trump's hand-picked Supreme Court got it wrong today, ruling that Congress has the power of the purse. You know, the way you learn in 5th grade, the way it says it in the Constitution in Article 1 all over the place, like Section 8. And the president can't just undo spending allocations by executive order. It's not how it works. So Musk is wrong again. And Trump did him no favor by repeating his embarrassing suggestion that millions of Americans over 150 years of age are receiving Social Security benefits. The Social Security Administration says there are roughly 90,000 people in this country, 99 or older, who receive benefits. Not millions, not even close. But the story of the night wasn't Trump's truth abuse. It could have been. But the Democrats gifted him a rare distinction, certainly for this president: high ground. How? How do you give Trump high ground? By Democrats being the worst behaved caucus in that chamber in modern history. Congressman Al Green stood and jeered at the president, shaking a stick at him, which reminded me of a moment in our history that I'll get back to. He got kicked out. He may get censured for his disruptions. Other Democrats heckled the president, held up signs in silent protest saying Musk steals and no king. Many of them were wearing pink, which they declared a power color of resistance. Okay. Look, in my estimation, the Democrats achieved one thing. They made Trump seem classy by comparison, and that is no easy task. They were exactly what they accuse MAGA of being. And it was because of this division and their display that what should have been the unifying moment of the night became proof of the ugliness that is our present political state of play. The moment would have been a beautiful one. You're looking at the kid right now, DJ Daniel, 13 years old, surviving brain cancer, okay? He was being singled out. He was only supposed to make it a few months. He's lasted years. Take a listen to the moment.
In 2018, DJ was diagnosed with brain cancer. The doctors gave him 5 months at most to live. That was more than 6 years ago. Tonight, DJ, we're going to do you the biggest honor of them all. I am asking our new Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, to officially make you an agent of the United States Secret Service.
You see his face? Beautiful, beautiful. Everybody should have been on their feet. Boy, do we need to celebrate the miracles. We need it so badly right now. And yet, I have no problem with protesting Trump's inaccurate assertions. I have no problems going after his actions. But icing a kid with cancer? So many Democrats refusing to clap or applaud DJ? You know why? Because in the ugly game of advantage, which is all our party politics is about, and don't let anybody tell you anything different, no one has high ground when it comes to seeking the bottom, okay? They both suck. DJ became too close to being a reflection of DJT, Donald John Trump. So not even a kid with cancer can escape being part of the game. And the Democrats' apparent idea of resistance doesn't mean what they've always been best at, finding a way to transcend division, to give messages of inclusion, especially to the working class. No, now resistance seems to mean only insistence on opposing Trump no matter what, no matter who gets in the way. And as a result, the Democrats wasted chances to counter what the president put forward as his best foot, countering him on the facts, which he often had wrong, countering on what he sees as the solutions, because we need better than what we've seen thus far from this administration. Just look at the economy. It tells the story of what this election was supposed to be about. The Democrats overshadowed the reality that Trump's tariff gambit just elicited the most aggressive response from China that we've seen in recent history. Did you see it? They put it out last night. This is not a fake. People say, oh, it's not real. It's not. No, they don't want it to be real. If the U.S. wants to solve the fentanyl issue, then they should consult with China by treating each other as equals. Now, that's absurd because China knows it's poisoning us. But listen to this line. If war is what the U.S. wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we are ready to fight till the end. Let me tell you something. It's not just a joke from Princess Bride that one of the classic blunders is getting involved in a land war in Asia. The idea of being this sideways with China is an existential threat. But the Democrats couldn't get into that because they overshadowed even that provocation with their own. So what should have been the low point of the night in terms of how to address Congress and how to be with each other, when Trump repeated the false claim that the United States has given Ukraine $350 billion. I don't know why he keeps doubling what we've given that country. I don't understand why he thinks that the facts won't prevail. So he mentions giving Ukraine money as if it were a bad thing. But Democrats and many of his own party think it's a good thing. So while the Republicans stay quiet because they're afraid of him, the Democrats cheered and drew the president's ire. Listen to what he said.
The United States has sent hundreds of billions of dollars to support Ukraine's defense with no security, with no anything. Do you want to keep it going for another 5 years? Yeah, you would say Pocahontas says yes.
I mean, look, ordinarily, saying something like that in this kind of setting, but I can't call out Trump for that cheap shot when the Democrats set a new low for decorum in that chamber. Not since Nancy Pelosi ripped up the president's speech in his last term have we seen such disrespect in that place. And what we saw last night was a hell of a lot worse. In fact, not since the caning of Charles Sumner in 1856 have we heard of such an ugly incident. I thought about it when I saw Green with the cane. You know what happened, right? So there was this fight over slavery, and this member of Congress was so disgusted with what was said about him as a pro-slavery person, that he came in a couple days later with a cane and beat the guy who said it over the head. This display, I hope, doesn't have the portent of what that one did, which was as a precursor to the Civil War. How we treat each other in moments that matter matters a lot. And bad things get to worse very easily these days when everything is magnified on social media. We learned the lesson that we need to observe today some 50 years before that event in 1856. Patrick Henry, the truth about the United States, he stated at that time, remains true today, maybe more than ever. United we stand, divided we will fall. Hey, thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget, click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.